Well, the conversation in regard to pupils' learning outcomes continues here on the Twitter jabs. And according to a 2021 government report, it did reveal that 60.5% of the children in upper primary cannot read competently. Now the word is competently, and the report compiled last year by the Education Ministry during research on the introduction of a competence-based method of education also revealed that only about 11.6% of the children in lower primary could read or write. Now it's very important that at the end of any learning experience you are able to come out with a learning outcome statement. And what are learning outcome statements are basically knowledge, skills, and abilities individual students should possess and can demonstrate upon completion of learning experience or sequence of learning experiences. Now, I'm no guru when it comes to this particular subject matter, so I am joined by Dr. Seruwu Alex Jones, and he is the proprietor of Good Hope Primary Schools all the way in Nabulagala. I hope I did get that right. Good morning, sir. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
We're talking and we're saying it feels like a year since we last saw you.
True. It's quite long, but fortunately that I'm back.
You are back to educate the nation on matters in regard to education still.
Yes.
Well, so what is your comment on the Pupils' Learning Outcomes 2021 report that did highlight that only 60.5% of the students in upper primary cannot read, neither can they write, and the word is competently?
Yes. Actually, I would say we have an education crisis in this country.
Okay.
First of all, before you look at the children, you know, children are as good as their teachers. Show me a good teacher, I show you a good child, or a good learner, in other words. So, when you look at before you look at the report that was released just recently, look at the UNEB report that was released in 2021 about the teacher's competence. When UNEB made an assessment in 2021, it was realized that 20% of primary school teachers are able to read. So if the 20%
exactly
are able to read and comprehend, that's the teachers.
Only the teachers
in the country.
Okay.
That means that those 20% are the ones who are teaching also the 40% of the learners, or the 39%.
Okay.
So meaning that the remaining bulk of the teachers cannot teach reading, cannot read. Therefore, they cannot actually give out what they don't have. So the biggest problem, one, is in the teacher training. The quality of teachers being recruited, rather admitted into the teaching training. Then from there, you look at the way they are trained. Afterwards, you look at the way they deliver in a class.
Okay.
And afterwards, what efforts are there to help them improve?
But why are we only looking at teachers? Don't parents also have a role when it comes to, you know, their pupils and their children being able to learn and comprehend?
Actually, there are multiple factors that determine the ability to read. However, teachers play a leading role in this, because teachers are trained to teach children how to read. That's one. They're the most competent people, trained and skilled to help children improve in their reading. Okay. Two, when you look at also that almost 60% of the children don't attend kindergartens. Yet in the kindergartens, research shows that in the kindergartens or preschool, that's where children are taught language development. You know, reading is a language.
Yes.
It's part of a language.
Yes.
It's one of the aspects of a language. So meaning that language development starts at the age of 3. That's when a child gets to learn the simple vocabularies of the language.
Okay.
Now, if many of the parents don't take their kids in the kindergartens, in the whole country, our government does not own any kindergarten. We don't have any government kindergarten across the country. And the kindergartens are located in urban centers. We have only 8,000 kindergartens in the country.
Yes. 8,000.
Yet annually, we usually have approximately 2 to 4 million children joining school. So meaning that the 8,000 kindergartens cannot actually accommodate even a million children.
So from where you're coming from, among the reasons as to why we're looking at the low quality of education when it comes especially to primary pupils is because they have missed that stage of attending kindergarten, which you think is very vital and important?
It's very, very vital in their learning life. So whenever actually government does not emphasize preschool education, it affects the general learning life of a child. No wonder the outcomes, the learning outcomes, that they are very low. When you compare the children who have actually gone through the cycle of preschool, then the junior primary,
yes,
you realize that their reading abilities are far better compared to those ones who have never attended the kindergartens. That's one. Two, government has not taken actually an initiative of actually creating kindergartens in its schools, primary schools. Three, it has not actually looked at the relevancy of kindergartens through guiding what should be learned. There is no well-stipulated curriculum. To the extent that even teachers of kindergartens, government do not recognize them as teachers. They're not teachers. It calls them caregivers.
okay.
That's why they are not certified. Meaning that government does not look at them as teachers, and as it does not look at them as teachers, it does not actually mind about the relevance of the kindergarten.
Okay.
But kindergartens world over have played a role in the initial stages of a child's learning ability.
Okay, so apart from the fact that we have highlighted that kindergarten plays a very vital role when it comes to the learning process of a child,
yes,
what is the other major cause of learning outcomes having a competence lag? Why are we still having a lag when it comes to children being able to read and write competently?
Also, when you look at the reading materials available, how many children in this country can access the reading materials? Remember, majority of the children who are unable to read are coming from low-income families all over the country. So they are unable to access learning materials or reading materials. Two, teachers, teachers also use the methods that are not appropriate. They use actually teacher-centered methods instead of the child-centered methods.
Yes, yes.
And also, above all, inspections are too inadequate. What I would call support supervision of teachers is too inadequate. So meaning that when a teacher is poorly trained, no learning materials, then not supported professionally, you realize that you cannot expect better results out of it. Then above all, many of the children actually go to schools that do not have any program that is actually focusing on teaching reading. Then also we look at the fact that children have actually find a challenge that at home they're using a local language. Assessment is done in the foreign language. I think you can see
yes,
with the confusion. When you add up all those factors, really children have to be affected academically.
But
remember, a child speaks Rusog at home,
exactly,
or
and
Lugubal at home. Then at school, is supposed to be taught in English. Is assessed in English.
Some parents have come out to argue, and I've come across a section of parents who argue as to why their children are being taught in English, yet they're not English men or women. So do you think that is also another role as to why we have a competence lag?
Psychology shows that actually, when you learn in your mother language,
yes,
you think critically better. You analyze issues better.
Because it's your own language.
You comprehend things better and you become innovative. That's why you see the most innovative and scientifically advanced countries in the world, they learn in their local languages. An American or a British do not actually use French to innovate, rather to learn. That's why you see Even the French does not learn English when he's applying actually what he has learned. They focus basically on their local language because we think better in our mother languages or local languages.
Okay. So
actually, by national curriculum, P1 to P4, they are meant to have compulsory local language. P1 to P3, actually, yes, it's compulsory. However, because of actually the colonial mentality in the minds of parents,
yes,
they think teaching children in a local language is backwardness. Because actually, we've not moved on as educationists to sensitize our parents the reason as to why children should learn in the local language.
But even while we're still looking at the competence slug, let us look at the aspect of homework, of weekly assignments. And this, yes, is a tweet that earlier on we were looking at with my colleague Priva. Yeah. And the tweet read and said that the reason as to why we actually have low quality education when it comes to primary is because of the mental health issues that children are facing. One, they wake up so early. True. A primary one child is waking up at 4 a.m., is waking up at 5 a.m. Secondly, they are constantly given homework which does not even involve the parents. True. Then they are being asked things such as, what did Nambi forget? So from my point of view, what is a child supposed to get from such a particular type of training?
Actually, the main issue is parents demand. The parents' demand is not in a relationship with, or is not actually in regard to the quality of education. For them, parents think that a child who is competent, a child who is learned, yes, is the one who has scored aggregate 4 in the P7. Is the child who has scored a 90 plus in any of the classes. So it means that instead of looking at the skills that the child has acquired at a particular level, a parent is demanding to see that mark. Has the child scored as the teacher taught? So what happens is, now teachers, due to that pressure, especially in private, teachers tend to focus on recall, drill, recall, cram, pass mentality. In the government schools where there is not that pressure, teachers relax also. After all, no one demands. After all, it's free education. You cannot hold them accountable. So at the end of the day, one, being that education is commercialized, that's where the biggest problem comes in. Two, because actually our education, the educational goals are not aligned with the national goals or the national vision. Because if you look at the Vision 2040, as it was earlier on stated, and you look at the goals of education currently, they don't serve the same purpose. So meaning that everyone teaches to get out his own outcome. You understand? After all, there is no unifying outcome expected from this child at the end of it all. So that's one of the challenges. Two, being that parents also and the teachers passed through the colonial system of drill and pass. They think it's the most appropriate. After all, it's the main, even the assessment tool. It's only the only form of education that they have known. Even the assessment tool available in the country, that is the UNEB assessment format, yes, is looking for the what I would call the other, should I call it actually? It's not actually looking at the skills, the general skills a child has learned. It's looking at the knowledge skills a child has actually learned. The knowledge skills, that's based on actually sit in the class, cram, and pass. Then also, when you look at the so-called good schools, secondary schools, they are looking at, did this child pass the exam? Okay. And after passing the exam, that means that one is bright. We should admit that one. And if this one doesn't pass, then they are not given an opportunity. Actually, we say those ones are not bright. They should repeat. They should look for their standards elsewhere. You understand? So now, being that the kind of assessment we have is dictating the way we teach in class, and it's affecting the learners.
Okay, so in your capacity as a school proprietor and also
Yes.
looking at the 2021 report that was released by the Ministry of Education,
Yes.
what competences should a primary 3 pupil have before they're actually promoted to P4?
One of the competences would be the communication skill.
Very important.
Is this child able to communicate? Is this child able to be is this child assertive? Then we look at also the social skills. Has this child learned how to interact with others? Can this child handle challenges that arise from interaction with others? Emotional challenges, psychological challenges, or actually even physical challenges that arise from interaction with others. Then, can this child create something? That's also a skill that this child should actually understand. Can this child create something? Can this child utilize the resources within the environment at his level or her level? So, for example, can this child know that this tree in the compound is useful? Therefore, I should water it. I should not pass in that grass in the compound because it's useful over this to me and actually to other members.
Okay.
So those are some of the skills that this child should have. Can this child create something? Can this child create craft materials? Say, for example, can this child make a mat? Can this child actually make a pot at that level? Can this child mold something? Those are some of the skills this child would have. Then this child should be able to understand the role of everyone in the community around him. Say, for example, if he finds Madam Shiva, she knows, oh, that one is a journalist.
Yes.
And the journalist does ABCD. The other one is a medical doctor. He does ABCD. I want also to be like the other engineer, a civil engineer. So meaning that this child should have those broad skills that would actually make him fit into the society. And above all, this child should have basic literacy skills, knowing the place values. Can this child count money? Can this child tell time? If the child cannot tell time by P3 level, cannot count money, then put a question mark on the relevance of this child going to school. You understand? So those are some of the basics that this child at least should have in day-to-day life.
I better go back to my primary school and ask for part of my school fees because I struggled to tell time in 24 hours. But anyway, so what are your sentiments on Uganda's current education system or curriculum?
Actually, Uganda's education system needs a comprehensive reform. A comprehensive reform. Today, if you look at a primary child who has spent 7 years in school, that's at the age of 12, assuming does not continue with his studies, what can this child competently do? Apart from maybe riding a border,
yes,
maybe being a taxi, actually not even a taxi driver, but there are those people actually, the taxi conductor. You understand? What else can this child do in life if he has not got a chance to continue? 2, can this child at the end of the day show that really he stepped into school after 10 years, after 20 years? Can this child still have a skill of letter writing? So that's why I say this education system in Uganda needs to be overhauled and then we reform it. Above all, we need to look at a child today that can handle the 21st century challenges. You know, by the time I was in school, there were no computers. That's when I was in my primary. There were no computers. Today, children know how to use computers, though they are not taught in most schools. You understand?
Yes.
So meaning that skill fades away just because it's not built. We don't build on that skill. Then look at also another challenge, that today we have different global challenges affecting humanity, like the global warming. We have global terrorism, among other issues. Poverty, disease. How prepared is this child who has passed through our education system to handle those challenges? Do we prepare this child to handle such challenges? You can just just look at the basic. Previously, when you had actually the outbreak of COVID, it took us 2 years to know how we can actually help our children come back to school. You understand?
Yes.
Yet, we could ably say, if our graduates of our education system were trained to handle such emergencies during their school time, they would not know. Let children go with a mask, wash hands, sanitize, check their temperatures. You understand? In case of saying ABCD, we should do this and that. You understand? Isolate them, do this. It took us 2 years to find out how we can handle. Moreover, after seeing how have others done elsewhere, the question is, how did the others learn that this is how we should handle? The education system matters.
Very important.
Then, look at today, the poverty levels in the country. Is our education aiming at reducing the poverty? Or we are actually increasing the poverty levels?
That is where the question of, are we training pupils or students to be job seekers or job creators?
That's why we think, one, the current Education Policy Review Commission that's led by Dr. Amanya Mushega, we think it should now look at critical areas that would shape this nation in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Through education, we need to see how do we shape the path of this country. That is, one, vocationalizing education. From primary one, let a child have a vocational skill this child should have. Go through that, actually get through the system. After 7 years, this child will have an experience of 7 years in, let me say, furniture making. 7 years of brick making. 7 years of simple mechanics.
Yes.
You understand? Meaning that even when this child leaves the school after 7 years, this child will be able
to put that skill to good use and not wait
Yes.
for a job in an office.
You understand? Not actually cramming the Portuguese, you understand, who were there actually 500 years ago.
But you are the same people who are teaching us things about Canadian premiers. I mean,
Yes.
why are you teaching a child things that they might even never go to Canada?
Yes.
So why am I learning about Canada instead of learning about Uganda as my country?
The biggest challenge was that the education system that was designed in Uganda was initially by the missionaries, later on by the colonialists, was not intended to serve Ugandans. It was supposed to serve the imperial group that was actually aiming at exploiting the Ugandans.
And that is where the challenge is.
And the graduates of that system over the years have been actually doing the same, exploiting the rest of the Ugandans purposely to fulfill, actually to achieve their selfish interests. Because that is the kind of education that was created.
Okay.
However, the education that we need is the education that helps this, actually, every person in the community. The education whereby people can actually realize that somebody who went to school is helping us. I remember one statement made by actually the late Nyerere, who said, the whole village gathers to collect food to give one person, you understand, to become better, so that he can in turn help them. Instead, after taking that food, this person goes to another place
And develops the other, instead
develops
of developing the
you understand?
Okay.
So that's the biggest challenge with our education, that we should see how does our education, rather graduates of our education
system, yes,
education system actually benefit the communities where they live. Today, if we ask, how do educated people in your community help to transform that community where they are?
They're not
when they cannot even greet each other. You understand? So, one, we need to vocationalize education. Two, since we are in a digital age, we should actually emphasize teaching of ICT right away from P1. Right away from P1. And it should be examined. The way the vocational skill need to be examined at the end of the day. At the end of the 7 years, let the vocational be examined, either by the Directorate of Industrial Training or by UNEB.
Absolutely.
Let actually the ICT, let us have a comprehensive curriculum for computer learning. Where actually we are getting actually challenged in Uganda that children in senior 1 are supposed to learn computer. But they have spent a good number of years when they have not actually pressed a button.
7 years.
Yes. They have not pressed a button. Now it becomes a new concept to them. Then after senior 4, they are free to choose either computer, that's ICT, or choose another.
Or choose math. Or
you
choose
choose subsidiary math.
Yes.
Then at the end of the day, it means that we are not focusing on the needs. We are not making this child become competitive on the global market.
At the end of the day, my sentiments and perception when it comes to the curriculum of Uganda would be the curriculum needs to adapt to the changes in society. I mean, as a country world over, we are slowly getting into a digital era. If not, we're already there.
Yeah.
So if the curriculum needs to be in accordance with the kind of world and era that we are living in, however, we understand that currently there are some education reforms and deliberations that are happening at the Ministry of Education and Sports, and you are among the people that did attend. So what's being discussed at the moment in regard to Uganda's education?
We are looking at actually, one, we are trying to figure out what model should we have in terms of education model. Say, for example, the Kenyan model, is it appropriate to Uganda? We have the British model, that's what we are following. America is, Kenya is diverting away from the British model to an American system. Then we have actually the Chinese or the German system. Which one can serve us better? You understand? We are looking at which system can make us have competent people at the end of the day, skilled. Then also we are discussing about policies. Say, for example, a policy on private education. The Minister of Education is given powers by to decide the fees of a school, whether private or government, but in a free market economy. You understand?
Yes.
That's why you see circulars at the end of the term from the Ministry of Education. Don't increase fees. A press conference is always called. Please, school directors, yes, no increase of fees. Because the education minister is given that power from the Education Act. However,
just before we go any further, so that we keep the viewers on track, you mentioned some of the systems that you've been discussing and the modalities, and you said, you know, there's a Kenyan system, there's a British system. What do these systems contain? What do they entail? Like, what is the education system like when it comes to Kenya, when it comes to things you talked about, Germany and Britain and
yes,
all these? Yes.
When you look at actually the education system, say for example, the German education system.
Yes.
A child actually after completing what I call the elementary school, that's the primary school.
Which would be primary in Uganda.
Yes. This child chooses either to go vocational or
go to secondary.
The normal secondary, the general secondary. But even in the general secondary, has to do 3 or 2 vocational subjects. Then after what I would call the lower secondary school level, this child can join, actually before he goes to the university, goes to a college or for further training in that vocation. No wonder German, does not have many graduates in terms of percentage as compared to Uganda, in terms of percentage. You understand? University graduates in terms of bachelor's degrees, but they have the most competent people. You understand? Because they are skilled in that way.
They're intentional in their education system. It's not about the numbers. It's about what are you putting out there on the market.
True. When you look at actually countries like China, after studying actually for 7 years, a child spends the full year, what we would call, Kenyans call it P8. And in Uganda it was earlier on suggested to have P8.
Yes.
That was during the Kajui's white paper, actually Kajui's report, or the education, the government white paper of 1992. They were suggesting P8. For Chinese, that 8th year, a child has to go into the community for service.
Community service.
Yes. To understand the community, where he's going to work later on after completing his education. Understanding the challenges. And the child is assessed. He's given actually the parameters to, that guide him. You understand? In the course of that 1 year.
Okay.
Then, for the American system, after completing high school, you have to go for community service. Yet actually in countries like North Korea, after what we would call the senior 4, a child has to go for military service. Not community service, but military service. So it depends, what do we really need? In Uganda, a child completes the university and is engaging, actually participating in any activity in the community. When a child cannot actually even talk to 3 people gathered together, when he's actually a graduate from the university. So we are looking at that kind of, we are trying to see, analyze each.
And every module that is being adapted by different
We are making
countries.
a comparative study of different models of education, so that we can come up with a better one that can actually help our children.
Okay, but you looking, I think let's try to be fair here. Yes, we have mentioned that the curriculum might not be the best, and also where you highlighted that, 20% of the teachers in primary schools can actually read and write. So what do you expect the product of a student to be? However, would you say that this competence lag, when it comes to, especially since we are looking at primary pupils, is affiliated or related because of the COVID-19, the fact that children were not going to school for a period of 2 years? So
should I say that when you spend 2 years, when you're not in Uganda, not speaking actually your local language, by the time you come back, you will have forgotten it? No.
The probability
reading is not actually crammed because it's a language. 2, learning is not meant to just actually cram those facts for that particular time. You are supposed to understand and apply what you've understood in your lifetime. Do you still need to be taught how to peel?
No. The question is, do I know how to peel? But let's continue.
But I assume that when you are taught to peel, it may have taken...
It's a skill that you cannot forget.
Yes. Even if you actually spend 10 years, 20 years, minus doing it, still, when you get a chance of actually
peeling,
using it, you can ably.
So in other words, COVID-19 is not to blame for...
COVID-19 is not an excuse whatsoever. It is actually a sign that our education system does not serve the true purpose of education. We don't actually get out what we are supposed to get. Our children are not learning, in other words. They're in school, not learning. You know, schooling and learning may be different. They're schooling, but they may not be learning. Because learning, it means that they're getting those skills permanently that will help them in their lifetime. So, that's where the biggest challenge is. We need to first go back on the drawing board and we see. Actually, we've gone back to the drawing board. We only think that whatever we propose will be adopted. Because you know also that is another thing.
That is also another issue on its own.
Yes. We are proposing different issues. But we don't know whether they will be all adopted. The way the government white paper was made in 1992. Yeah? Actually I would say 60% of what was actually recommended has been implemented. But then the remaining 40% may be very critical, very essential to stimulate the education system, but was left out or it was not implemented 30 years down the road.
Well,
you understand?
Well, finally, Mr. Alex Jones, because of the time that is on our hand, what are your final remarks in regard to this particular conversation?
One, we need actually soul searching for education, because many of our products and graduates of our education system really are not learned. They have gone to school. Parents have paid dearly for their children to be at school, but we've not helped them. We've actually managed to coach them to pass exams, but we've not taught them to become relevant to their communities.
But let's narrow it down to a perspective when we come to primary going children, especially those in upper primary.
Yes.
So what are still your last suggestions when it comes to improving their competence?
One, teacher training is very essential. Teachers need to be trained to handle these children well. Two, teachers, after training them, we need to see that teachers understand the children, because children learn differently. Children need to be understood. Three, there is need to invest in education. A lot of investment is needed in education, so that, one, we reduce on the numbers in class. So, for example, you find actually most primary schools having 80 or 100 children in one class, whereby one teacher cannot handle them. So we need to invest in education a lot, so that we have more teachers into the system, more classrooms to accommodate these children, so that a teacher-child ratio reduces from the official 55 per one teacher to 25 or 30 children per teacher. Then also we need to actually to increase on the inspection and support supervision. Much as our teachers may be trained, but they need support supervision. We need to support them. We need to actually always carry out capacity building. After supporting them, we need to build their capacity. And above all, motivation.
Absolutely. We
need to motivate our teachers plus the children. When the children are not motivated, results cannot come out well. When our teachers are not motivated, we cannot expect the best. So we need actually to have motivation of our teachers.
That is indeed true. And for, like the saying goes, for those that have ears, you have heard. Well, thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. As a famous quote says, education is the passport to the future. It's very important that parents, guardians, government at large, teachers, we need to invest in education, because at the end of the day, and especially when it comes to primary education is the foundation of anyone and what they become in the future. Well, that winds up the conversation that we had for you this morning on the Twitter Jabs. However, up next is beauty, wellness, and lifestyle, and I shall be heading to the spa and showing you what a perfect pedicure looks like. Keep watching Sunrise at Sea and don't blink.